bitter criticism reading the Jazeera economy, because economy is not so sad as the usual genocide dossier. Here we are reading economy on Al Jazeera. This move, it was predictable, because China produces all the smartphones, all the gadgets in the world. So they are exempt, says Trump exempts smartphones, computers from reciprocal tariffs. There's a photograph showing the step will lessen the cost effect on US consumers, as electronic components such as iPhones are mainly imported from China. Yeah, it's so strange, isn't it? It's so complex, but it's something like that. The US produces in China. The US produces in China. So how they are going to tariff what they themselves are producing in China? Understand? And says the latest exemptions cover imports from China in foresign of possible softening of U.S. trade war against Beijing. It says April 12th. Updated 4 hours ago. Smartphones, laptops, and a host of other tech components will be spared from the Trump administration's so-called quote-unquote reciprocal tariffs, including steep 125% duties on imports from China, according to a notice issued by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The U.S. CBP on Friday listed 20 product categories, including the very broad 8471 code for all computers, laptops, disk drivers, and automatic data processing. It also included semiconductor devices, equipment, memory chips, and flat panel displays. The exclusions provide welcome relief to major U.S. technology firms, including Apple and many other importers, which rely on Chinese manufacturing. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. The production is intricate, so it's absolutely hard to separate what the hell the production and how they are going to do it anyway. Let's say an iPhone is produced by the US or by China. So are there Chinese people buying iPhones in China? Understand how crazy all this prehistoric commerce. This is absolutely interesting. This is like the protectionism. Protectionism is kind of dying, you know. It's impossible to do some protectionism, but who knows? I guess it's all in favor of China. China, if they want to do it, they will keep producing. Anyway, it's a very strange world. The exclusions provide welcome relief to major US technology firms, including Apple and many other importers, which rely on Chinese manufacturing. There was no immediate comment from the White House on the exemptions, but the exemptions suggest an increasing awareness within the Trump administration of the pain that his tariffs had in store for US consumers, especially on popular products such as smartphones, laptops, and other electronics. Daniel Ives, a senior equity analyst and Wedbush Securities, called the U.S. exemptions, quote, the best news possible for tech investors, end quote. U.S. tariff exclusions will apply to computers, smartphones, and chip-making equipment, which takes away a huge black cloud overhang for now over the tech sector, end quote. He said in a note cited by the AFP news agency. Without these exemptions, he said, the US tech industry will be taken back a decade and the AI revolution thesis will have been slowed significantly, end quote. The move came as retaliatory Chinese import tariffs of 125% on US goods took effect on Saturday, with Beijing standing defiant against its primary trade competitor. Earlier in the week, Trump officials announced a 90-day reprieve on quote-unquote reciprocal tariffs for most countries, introducing instead a flat 10% rate, though China remained excluded from the revised scheme. Source news agencies published on Al Jazeera English. Right here in the most shaking buzz economy, the second news. And says, second news from Al Jazeera Economy. And says, U.S. consumer sentiment tumbles as trade war fears grow. Then there's a photograph from Cost or something. As consumer sentiment falls, American shoppers stock up on supplies before tariffs impact prices. On the photograph is on April 10. Yeah, I didn't thought about it. I didn't buy anything by myself neither. So let me tell you, there will be a lot of crime if life became costly. There will be a lot of crime right here in Chile and everywhere in capitalism. That will be the end of capitalism. Expectations of rising unemployment hit the highest level since 2009. Oh, definitely, capitalism is dying. April 11, United States consumer sentiment plunged in April, marking the fourth month in a row of declines, widely seen as a pointed reaction to President Donald Trump's escalating trade wars, which have fueled concerns over potential job losses and rising inflation. The preliminary reading of the University of Michigan's closely watched Consumer Sentiment Index, released Friday, fell 11% in March to 50.8%, the lowest since the depths of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the past year, sentiment tumbled 34%. The decline was pervasive and was quote pervasive and unanimous across age, income, education, geographic region, and political affiliation. I lost the news. Political affiliation. Survey of Consumers Director Joanne Su said in a public statement, the share of respondents expecting unemployment to rise in the coming months increased for the fifth straight month and is now the highest since 2009 during the Great Recession. While a consumer sentiment is not always a reliable indicator of the overall economy, it has at times reflected shifting vibes in how the public feels about presidential leadership. Sentiment among Republicans has dropped 6% over the past month as Trump teased, then rolled out a series of aggressive tariffs, only to institute a 90-day pause of some import taxes Wednesday. Quote, interestingly, President Trump appears to be getting much of the blame for much of the deterioration in sentiment, with 67% of respondents saying the government is doing a quote-unquote poor job on fighting inflation and unemployment. James Knightley, chief international economist as ING, told the Associated Press AP news agency, quote, only 18% say it is doing quote-unquote a good job. Asked at Friday's news briefing about the falling consumer sentiment, while House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt advised that the public should trust in Trump as he executed his tariffs plan. Quote, as he said, this is going to be a period of transition, end quote, she said, end quote. He wants consumers to trust in him, and they should trust in him, end quote. The result of the trade war drama so far is a baseline tariff on most countries of 10%, with imports from China getting taxed at a combined 145%. Goods from Canada and Mexico face tariffs of up to 25%, while imported autos, steel, and aluminum are taxed at the same rate. China retaliated Wednesday with a 25% tariff on U.S. goods. I want to know the details. I want to know specific details about, let's say, I don't remember. Smartphones, iPhones, iPhones are made in China, but they are possession, a product from the US, but anyway, a private product. The Trump administration has suggested that it will cut new trade agreements with more than 75 nations over a span of 90 days. Quote, we are doing really well on our tariff policy, end quote, Trump said Friday on his social media site Truth Social. Very exciting for America and the world. It is moving along quickly, end quote. Recession cusp. Eroding American confidence has also surfaced in the financial markets. Investors are selling off U.S. debt. The interest rate of the 10-year U.S. Treasury note was 4.51% in Friday afternoon trading, up from roughly 4% at the start of the week. That suggests more economic instability ahead. On Friday, the dollar slumped to a 3-year low against the euro. Larry Fink, CEO of the investment firm BlackRock, told the financial news network CNBC that the US economy is on the cusp of a downturn, if not already there. Quote, I think we are very close, if not in recession now, end quote, Fink said. The University of Michigan sentiment survey found that people now expect long-term inflation to reach 4.4%, up from 4.1% last month, a move that may be of particular concern for the U.S. Federal Reserve. The Fed pays close attention to inflation expectations because they can become self-fulfilling. If people expect prices to rise, they often take steps that can push up prices, such as accelerating purchases or seeking higher wages. Can you see? I will read again. The Fed pays close attention to inflation expectations because they can become self-fulfilling. So in a communist regime, there's not even stock market. So communism is better because there's no this craziness. There's a video that says, what does Trump aim to achieve by making it costlier for the rest of the world to sell their goods in the US? There's a question. It's a sign that most of the public views as a blip this week, showing that consumer inflation declined in March to an annual rate of 2.4%. Most economists believe that given the intensifying trade wars, inflation is likely to be reignited. Americans' inflation expectations over the next 5 years are now at the highest since 1991, according to Capital Economics, a forecasting firm. Quote, households appear to have come to the same conclusion as markets. The tariffs will do lasting damage to the U.S. economy, end quote. Harry Chambers, assistant economist at Capital Economics, said in an email to the AP, Associated Press. Consumer sentiment remains sharply divided by party, with the index for Democrats at 34.1 and Republicans at 81.9. Yet both recorded step drops in April. Sentiment among independents plunged to 46.8 from 55.7 and is sharply below its post-election peak of 70.2. The April reading among independents is now lower than it was at any point during Joe Biden's presidency. There's another video. Oh, there's a vaccination campaign to influenza. I guess I'm cool drinking lemon juice. It says, the U.S. now faces a higher risk of inflation and increased unemployment because of Trump's global tariffs, the Federal Reserve warns. Those inflation expectations have now jumped for several months. At the news conference last month, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the University of Michigan's inflation expectations measure was an quote-unquote outlier. Market-based measures of inflation expectations based on inflation-adjusted Treasury securities have remained low, near the Fed's 2% target. Typically, falling sentiment suggests that Americans will cut back on spending, though in recent years consumers have at times kept spending despite the gloom. Still, the fact that worries about employment are rising. Still, the fact that worries about the employment are rising could lead to more caution by consumers, and that's it. Source Associated Press. I guess I'm going to read just one more because it's all about tariffs now. this a nice article about economic Trump's tariffs, a simple illustrated guide to. I can see it. Explainer: Trump's tariffs, a simple illustrated guide to 15 economic terms to know. What do terms like tariffs, trade deficits, trade war, bonds, and recession mean in simple language? I guess I understand. By Alia Shuktai Hannah Dugal, updated a day ago. There's a lot of great channels on YouTube, not mine, but there's Brazilian channels, for example. Throughout the past few weeks, United States President Donald Trump has announced a series of tariff policies with shifting statements that have led to growing concerns about global economic instability. With Trump's tariffs affecting nearly every country, many terms have been thrown around to describe the potential results. From trade wars to stock market drops, this article explains in simple terms, with illustrations, what these key terms mean, including those that may become more important in the coming months. First, tariff. It says tariffs are simply taxes imposed at the border by one country on the goods of a foreign country. They are usually aimed to protect local businesses from foreign competition. So the United States are assuming they are not competitive. Reciprocal tariffs have come to define Trump's trade policy of imposing the same tariffs on other countries that those countries impose on US goods. It's like saying, if you, quote, if you charge us, we will charge you the same, end quote. I guess it's not the same. I guess it's not the same. I guess it's more, but who knows. And well, there's a guide here. The graphic says, tariff, a tax on goods coming into a country usually aimed to protect local businesses from foreign competition. It's like a fee at the door. If a product wants to enter the country, it has to pay to get in. Reciprocal tariff, when one country matches the import tax that another country has set. It's like saying, if you charge us, we will charge you the same. Retaliatory tariff is a tax a country adds to imports to strike back when another country raises taxes. It's like saying, quote, if you make it hard for us, we'll do the same to you. Or maybe worse than you. That's what I understand. Second, trade war. The trade war says a trade war occurs when, for example, two countries dispute trade practices and one country places extra tariffs on goods from another that it believes is engaging in unfair trade practices. The other country retaliates with tariffs, and this tit for tat continues, thus escalating into a trade war. It's like an economic tug of war where both sides keep pulling harder instead of finding a way to agree. A good example is the US-China trade war, which has been in effect since 2018, when the US placed tariffs on Chinese goods. More recently, the tit-for-tat between Washington and Beijing has seen tariffs on China rise to 145%. Trade deficit and surplus. And says, a trade deficit occurs when a country imports more goods than it sells exports, meaning the demand for for foreign goods is greater than the supply of its own products. For example, the US has a trade deficit with China because it buys more goods from China, like electronics and clothing, than it sells to it. A trade surplus is the opposite. This happens when a country sells more goods than it buys. For example, the US has a trade surplus with the Netherlands because it sells more goods like machinery and agricultural products for the Netherlands than it buys from it. I guess I'm going to stop now because I'm done. It's too large. Look, there are 15.